The eternal girl syndrome. Carl Jung reveals why she won't grow up. What if I told you that the most dangerous kind of woman isn't evil, vindictive, or even narcissistic, but eternally innocent? Not childish, but childlike. Not immature in the usual way, but stuck in a psychological stasis so radiant, so beguiling, that even she doesn't know she's trapped in it. This isn't about gossip or gender. It's about archetypes, about something Carl Jung believed lives in all of us, regardless of gender. It's the puella eterna, the eternal girl. A woman who never truly grows up. And here's the catch, she doesn't want to. Not consciously. But something within her, deep in her psyche, fears adulthood like it fears death. And that's where our journey begins. You see, Jung didn't invent the eternal girl, he uncovered her. Like an archaeologist brushing away the dust of centuries to reveal an ancient statue that still pulses with meaning. The puella eterna isn't just a metaphor. She's an archetype, a recurring symbolic pattern that appears across myth, literature, and yes, even in your relationships. Think Alice in Wonderland, Dorothy from Oz, or even modern pop icons who radiate a kind of arrested development wrapped in sparkle and light. On the surface, she's radiant, spontaneous, full of wonder. But beneath that shimmer lies something more tragic. A refusal, a psychological impasse. A soul that cannot or will not cross the threshold into maturity. But have you ever met someone who seemed allergic to responsibility? Who floated through life with charm and chaos, but never really landed? Maybe you've dated her. Maybe you are her. Maybe she's your sister, your friend, your muse. There's something intoxicating about her, isn't there? She laughs easily, dances freely, and speaks with the wild sincerity of a child. But there's also something missing, something hollow at the center. And if you stay around long enough, you start to feel it. The fear, the evasion, the inability to sit with discomfort, to wrestle with the weight of real consequences. The eternal girl doesn't grow up because the world has never given her a reason to. Or maybe it has, and she just ran from it.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
But why? Why does she resist the very process that gives us depth, resilience, and wisdom? Carl Jung believed that every human being must confront the process of individuation, becoming a whole self by integrating the unconscious parts of the psyche. For the eternal girl, this means facing her inner shadow, the parts of her that are not pretty, not innocent, not beloved. And this is where the terror lies. Because to grow up, she must sacrifice the image that gives her power. The image of the girl untouched, uninhibited, unburdened. But the longer she clings to that image, the more she becomes a ghost of herself, or a mirage, a story she can no longer live up to. Here's the philosophical twist. We live in a culture that rewards the eternal girl. From Instagram to pop culture, from romantic comedies to fashion trends, we worship youth not just as a stage of life, but as a personality trait. We tell women to be forever radiant, forever spontaneous, forever desirable. But we don't tell them how to become wise. We don't tell them how to age with grace, how to love through sacrifice, how to suffer with dignity. And so many remain trapped in a loop, performing girlhood long after it has served its purpose. Ask yourself this: what do we lose when we stay young forever? But what wisdom dies unborn when we refuse the call to maturity? The eternal girl syndrome is not just about women. It lives in all of us, in every man who avoids commitment, in every adult who numbs with distraction, in every soul that fears becoming real. Jung understood that these archetypes live inside the collective unconscious. They're not personal flaws, they're ancient energies. But when they dominate the psyche, they distort our growth. They keep us stuck in a kind of psychological neverland. And the longer we stay, the harder it is to leave. So how do we escape? Not by abandoning the girl, but by integrating her. She has gifts: spontaneity, joy, wonder. But those gifts must be tempered by the wisdom of the crone, the mother, the sage. We must let the girl die not in the literal sense, but symbolically, so that the woman can be born. Just as the caterpillar must dissolve into goo before it becomes a butterfly, we too must shed the skin of our youth to become whole. But that takes courage. It takes grief. It takes saying goodbye to a version of ourselves that once brought us love. Are you ready to do that? Are you strong enough to become someone deeper than who you once were? This isn't about blaming or shaming. It's about waking up. About asking yourself, where in my life am I still clinging to the eternal girl? Where am I refusing to grow? You might think this only applies to women. But consider this: every man who chases the eternal girl is also trying to avoid his own growth. He seeks someone who won't challenge him to change, who won't demand depth, who lets him play Peter Pan. And so the cycle continues: two people locked in a dream of youth, afraid to wake up. But what happens when the dream ends? The tragic beauty of innocence, why the eternal girl is both angel and abyss innocence. It's one of the most seductive qualities in human psychology. We're drawn to it instinctively: the untouched, the unspoiled, the pure. But here's the paradox: what we worship as innocence often conceals a terrifying kind of unconsciousness. Innocence can be beautiful, yes, but it can also be dangerous. Because when innocence is preserved past its natural season, it becomes ignorance. And when ignorance is paired with charm and desire, it becomes power without wisdom. That is the secret shadow of the eternal girl. Carl Jung saw this clearly. In his exploration of archetypes, he warned us: the puella eterna is not evil. She is not malicious, but she is incomplete. And incompleteness, when idealized, becomes a form of spiritual paralysis. The eternal girl lives in the realm of possibility, not reality. She is always becoming, never being. Always on the verge of transformation, but never willing to cross the threshold. Why? Because becoming real requires sacrifice. And sacrifice is what she fears most. Think of this: in every fairy tale, the heroine undergoes a transformation. She suffers, she descends, she confronts darkness. Only then does she rise. But the eternal girl rejects the descent. She wants the magic without the pain, the wings without the cocoon. She wants to be seen as radiant, but not responsible. And so she remains in a suspended state, half child, half woman. Not because she's incapable of growth, but because she's terrified of what growth demands, the end of innocence. And yet we must be careful here. We cannot simply demonize her. Because the eternal girl is also a symbol of something profoundly sacred. She reminds us of the soul's longing for wonder, for lightness, for beauty. She holds the key to spontaneity, to joy, to the art of being fully alive in the moment. In many ways, she is what the modern world has forgotten how to play, how to dream, how to love without calculation. Her presence is a form of spiritual rebellion against the cold machinery of adult life. But if she never evolves, that rebellion becomes self-defeating. She becomes not a light in the darkness, but a flame that flickers and fades. Let's ask something dangerous. What if your obsession with staying young is actually a fear of being seen? Because maturity means exposure. It means accountability. It means no longer hiding behind charm or naivety. And that's terrifying. Many of us wear youth like a mask, not because we're vain, but because we're vulnerable. We fear that who we are once stripped of glitter and innocence won't be loved. And so we perform. We flirt, we enchant, but deep down we're exhausted. Because the eternal girl, despite all her sparkle, is often deeply lonely. Why? Because no one can truly know her, not even herself. She lives in fragments. Her identity is fluid, shifting, elusive. She cannot be pinned down because she has never taken the inward journey to find her center. And until she does, all her relationships will be mirrors of her own fragmentation, beautiful, intense, but ultimately unsustainable. She will attract admiration, but not intimacy, desire, but not devotion. And over time, she may begin to wonder, why does no one stay? Why do I feel so hollow, even when I'm adored? This is the existential tragedy. The eternal girl does not know what she truly desires. She thinks she wants freedom, but she craves meaning. She thinks she wants love, but she craves wholeness. And love without wholeness is just projection, a fantasy, a play between two masks. So here's the question for you: whether you are her or drawn to her, what are you avoiding by staying in the realm of innocence? What truth are you afraid to face about yourself? We live in a culture that sells us the illusion that youth is the pinnacle of human experience. But Jung would argue the opposite. True beauty lies not in eternal youth, but in the soul's courageous journey through darkness into light. The girl must die so the woman can be born. And that death is not a loss, it's a liberation. Because when you stop performing innocence, you begin to embody wisdom. You become someone who doesn't need to be adored to be valuable. Someone who can hold pain without collapsing. Someone who can love without losing themselves. The eternal girl is not your enemy. She is your beginning. But she is not your destination. Escaping Neverland, but how to break free from the archetype that keeps you small. It's one thing to recognize the eternal girl within ourselves or in others. It's another thing entirely to escape her gravitational pull. Archetypes are not just ideas, they are living forces within the psyche. They operate beneath our awareness, influencing our choices, shaping our identity, and scripting our relationships. And the Paula A. Turner is one of the most seductive of them all. She whispers promises of freedom, spontaneity, and love without responsibility. But those promises often decay quietly into patterns of avoidance, emotional chaos, and a life that never quite lands. So how do we break free? The first step is radical honesty. Not the kind of surface-level confession that makes for a good caption on social media, but a deep reckoning with the self. You must ask yourself, what part of me is afraid to grow? This is not a rhetorical question, it's a mirror. And if you stare into it long enough, you will see the subtle ways you've chosen comfort over courage, charm over commitment, beauty over depth. There is no shame in this. It is human. But what's at stake is your wholeness. And wholeness demands that you stop running. Carl Jung emphasized the importance of individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, not who the world has conditioned you to be. For the eternal girl, individuation means stepping into the wilderness of maturity. It means confronting what she fears most: boredom, responsibility, aging, limitation. These are not glamorous ideas. They don't sparkle, but they are the soil in which depth grows. Without them, you remain rootless, forever floating, forever searching, forever incomplete. But escaping Neverland is not about abandoning youth. It's about integrating it. You don't kill the girl, you evolve her. You take her spontaneity and infuse it with discipline. You take her wonder and anchor it in wisdom. You take her desire to be seen and transform it into a capacity to see others. That's the path forward, not denial, but transformation. But here's the hard truth: transformation hurts. It requires loss. You must let go of the identity that once kept you safe, the girl who was adored because she was naive, the girl who never had to make hard choices, the girl who could always blame someone else when things went wrong. That girl is not evil. She was necessary. She got you here, but she can't take you further. She doesn't know the way. And yet, even as you begin this metamorphosis, the world will try to pull you back. Because the eternal girl is profitable. She sells. She entertains. She flatters our fantasies. The culture will tell you to stay cute, stay small, stay agreeable. But real growth means becoming someone who can be misunderstood, someone who can stand alone, someone who no longer needs validation to know they're valuable. That's terrifying, but it's also freedom. Ask yourself, what would my life look like if I stopped performing the girl and started embodying the woman? Not the woman defined by age or body, but by depth, by clarity, by presence. Who would you be if you didn't need to be liked? Who would you be if you allowed yourself to be whole, messy, powerful, wise? For those drawn to the eternal girl, especially men, there's a parallel journey. You must ask, what am I avoiding by idolizing her? Often, the answer is your own growth. The eternal girl is a refuge from responsibility. She will never demand that you become a man of integrity because she hasn't become a woman of substance. It's a mutually reinforcing fantasy. But at some point, fantasies must end. And when they do, you're left with the truth that love without depth is just projection, and projection always collapses. So let it collapse. Let the image fall apart. Let the illusion die, and in its place, let something real emerge. A self that is no longer afraid to grow. A self that is not addicted to youth or trapped in nostalgia. A self that can endure life's winters, not just its summers. That's what maturity is. Not the end of beauty, but the beginning of meaning. The final metamorphosis, reclaiming depth in a world obsessed with lightness, to grow up, is not to become dull, bitter, or burdened. It is to become real. And in a world that worships surface, speed, and sparkle, reality is the greatest rebellion. The eternal girl syndrome thrives in a culture that fears depth, because depth requires stillness. It requires presence. It requires you to look at the parts of yourself that aren't curated, aren't liked, aren't photogenic. But only in those hidden places does the soul begin to speak. Carl Jung taught us that the psyche is not just a machine, it is a living organism, and like any organism, it requires growth, decay, transformation. The puella eterna is not a pathology at first, she is a necessary phase. But when we cling to that phase, when we build our identity around never changing, we begin to rot in place. We become caricatures of who we once were, endlessly looping the same emotional patterns, the same relationships, the same avoidance of pain. And yet, we wonder why life feels empty. The truth is, depth cannot be faked. It must be earned. It is forged in the fire of disappointment, heartbreak, perseverance, solitude. It is sculpted through saying no when it would be easier to say yes, through showing up when no one is watching, through choosing love even when it doesn't look like a fairy tale. The eternal girl fears this because she thinks it will destroy her. But the paradox is that it's the only thing that can truly make her whole. So I ask you, not rhetorically but urgently, what part of you is still clinging to lightness out of fear? What would happen if you fell into your own depths, not as a punishment, but as a return? Because growing up doesn't mean losing your magic. It means discovering that your magic is deeper than you ever imagined. It's not in your charm, it's in your courage. It's not in your innocence, it's in your integrity. It's not in being adored, it's in being known fully, even in your darkness. The final metamorphosis isn't loud. It doesn't come with applause. It often happens in quiet, private moments when you finally sit with your sadness instead of escaping it, when you take responsibility instead of blaming someone else, when you stop asking for love and start being it. That is the moment the eternal girl dissolves not into nothing, but into something greater, a woman who remembers her lightness but is no longer ruled by it, a soul that has roots. And so now, the final question, are you ready to stop floating and start becoming? Not because you must, but because you can. Not because you failed, but because you've outgrown the fantasy. And because somewhere inside you, something wiser is waiting for you to choose the real over the easy, the whole over the pretty, the woman over the girl,